Hey guys, today in this video we'll be working on part 2 of lists. I already created a file called lists2.py, and this is where we're going to keep going with working with lists. So the last time in the last video we talked about some basics and the basic syntax of lists, and in this video we're going to take it a step further and start working with lists, manipulating lists, using lists inside of loops, and just doing some more complex things with lists. Okay? So I want to show you the power of using lists, and especially the power of using lists inside of loops with this example. So suppose that you're going to the grocery store and you need to create a grocery list. And this grocery list is based on user input. So one way to do that is the following, and this is not using a list. Okay, so creating grocery list items without using a loop or a list. Okay, so one way to do this is to do something like this. Item 1 equals input, enter the first item in your grocery list. Okay, item 2 equals input, enter the second item in your grocery list. Item 3, input, enter the third item in your grocery list. Okay, maybe we'll just do like 5, but you get the idea, so you could also copy and paste. Okay, so this is one way to do it. So if I run the program, it'll allow me to enter multiple items, so like apples, oranges, milk, cheese, cereal, right? So this is one way to do it. Now, this is very redundant, right? Like you're basically asking the same question other than, listing the number, the item number. But other than that, sorry for my spelling mistakes. Sometimes it's hard to type and speak at the same time, so I don't catch little mistakes like that. But anyways, other than changing the number in front of the item, you're basically doing the same thing over and over again. So as a programmer, this should scream loop for you because you're repeating something. So, you know, whenever you're repeating something multiple times, you're better off using a loop just because it's cleaner. And here we only have 5 items, but what if you wanted to get like 100 items? You would need to type this 100 times or copy and paste 100 times, which is not efficient at all. Okay, so let's do this the smart way. So this is going to be creating a grocery list using a list and a loop. Okay, so let's do this. Let's create a list, an empty list. So I'm going to call it grocery list because that just makes sense. Now, if I put my brackets and nothing inside, that creates an empty grocery list. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a while true loop to get my loop started. And we're going to start by asking a question. So item equals input, enter the item in your grocery list. Now, I'm asking a general question, or I'm saying enter the item. We're gonna make this more specific in a little bit, so let's just hold off for a little bit. So they're gonna enter an item, but let's actually give them the power to get out of this in case they don't have any more items to enter. So basically you're telling the user, okay, if you have an item, enter it. Otherwise, if you want to quit, enter Q. So let's do that. So enter the item in your grocery list. Let's do this. if there are no more items, then enter Q or lowercase q to quit. All right, so what's nice about this is you're giving power to the user to quit the program, right? So how do we make sure that we quit? So here's what we're gonna do. If item equals q or item equals uppercase q, hopefully you guys, saw this coming, right? So if that's the case, we're gonna need to break out of our loop. Otherwise, if they didn't enter Q or uppercase Q, then what we're going to have to do is take our grocery list and update it. So how are we going to update it? Well, we're going to take our grocery list and set it equal to what we have already, which right now is a blank list, but that's fine. And we're going to add the item. So the way you would do that is you would put the item inside of the brackets to show that, you're trying to add a new item to your grocery list. So this is how you concatenate list concatenation with a new item. Okay? So you're basically saying take whatever was in the list before and add this new item to the end of it. Now, at first, the first item they enter, it's just going to be a blank list plus the item. So now the grocery list is the list of that one item. And then this is going to keep looping and adding items to our list. Okay? So that's it. I think that should work. And then at the end of the loop or outside the loop, we can print something like that, like this. Here is your grocery list. Okay, and then we're going to print our actual grocery list. Oops. All right, let's see if this works. Let me make this smaller so in case you need to see it all together. All right, take a look. I'm going to run my program. It says enter the item in your grocery list. If there are no more items, then enter Q or lowercase q to quit. So first I'm going to test this out and just put Q. Okay, and then it says here's your grocery list and it shows me an empty list. Okay, that works fine. So I'm going to do milk, eggs, cereal. And let's say I'm done with my list, so I'm going to enter uppercase Q. Alright, so it quits the program and it tells me here's your grocery list, milk, eggs, cereal. Very cool, right? Now, if you wanted to print the list, but you didn't want it to print this way, like, in brackets with all the strings inside of it, you could use a for loop. So you could do for item in grocery list. So this is a new type of for loop that you haven't really necessarily seen before. This variable item is a random variable. I could have said I in grocery list. So basically I'm saying for every element in the list, grocery list, I can print I. So watch, instead of printing my grocery list, now it's going to actually print them. Here, let's try this out. Eggs, milk, cheese. And then I'm going to do Q. Okay, so now it just prints them like from top to bottom, which is pretty cool. You could do something else. Let's see, what you can do is, let's say that when we ask them a question, like enter the item, you want to be more specific. Like you want to say item number 1, item number 2, item number 3. What you can do is, you can go here in the question, so enter item, okay. So we're going to need to add something else, item. And then think about this. Right now, the length of your grocery list when we first start is 0, but you want to ask for item number 1. So what you can do is you can do grocery list. Actually, you can use the length function. So we can do, did we go over the length function in the previous, I think we did. Yes, we did. Okay, so you can use the len function and you can ask for the length of grocery list. Now, The length of a grocery list at first is 0, but you want to ask them for item number 1. So it's technically the length plus 1 to get you the correct position number for that item. So watch, if I run it, I think it should work, except we got an error. Let me see why. It's not. Line 15, input expected at most 1 arguments, and we got 3. Huh. That's strange, because maybe I have to put this in parentheses. Maybe it would like that better. Let's see. Nope. Still. What if I use the plus sign? Maybe that's better. But then I would have to typecast as a string. Okay, that seems to work. I need to fix it a little bit. Put a space here. Let's see. Enter item 1 in your... Actually, I'm gonna put a number symbol here just so, to make it look better. Okay, enter item number 1. So let's say milk. Enter item number 2, eggs. So you see it's actually telling me the item number, which is pretty cool. And then cheese, and then Q to quit. And then it says here's your grocery list, but I commented out the print statement, so it does fully work. So eggs, cheese, and milk, quit, and there we go. Let's see, why is it not... Do we just not have enough space? Yes, okay, there we go. I didn't have it expanded enough, but it does print the grocery list. So, I'm not sure why it didn't work with the comma. I think it was just kind of confusing, all the syntax, so I just ended up using the plus sign to concatenate. And I had to typecast as a string, because when you concatenate with the plus sign, you have to make sure everything is the same data type. So, alright, so that's pretty cool. You can use this to help you create lists. So this is a really good example. So definitely jot this down, make sure you understand it, make sure that when you run it, it works. Alright, good. So let's move on to the next thing that we're gonna do. I'm trying to see what else I want to show you guys. So here's another thing that some of you actually have used already in your projects, especially in that combo menu project you had to do. So I saw that some of you guys started using lists, and not only that, you started using the in and not in operators. So basically, you can use in and not using using lists. So the way they work is by telling us if an item is in a list or not in a list. So in and not in is what I meant. The in and not in operators. I said that wrong in the beginning. So let's say that you have a list, and just to clarify, let me just write this down. The in and not in operators determine whether a value is or isn't in a list. Okay, so that's basically it. It's what you would think they do, right? So it kind of makes sense. So they will probably return true or false. They return true or false. So let's see. Let's try this out. Okay, so you could do something like print let's do a list. So here's greetings list equals, let's see, hello, hi, howdy, yo. Okay, so this is a greetings list. And then you could do something like this, print. So howdy in greetings list. So let's think about what this is doing. So what this is doing is it's saying print the result of is howdy in greetings list. So look at the greetings list. Is howdy an item? It is. So this should hopefully print true if I'm thinking about this correctly. And it does. So it doesn't print howdy. So just be careful. Howdy is in quotes, but because you're using the in operator, it's just checking if howdy is in greetings list. So the not in checks if it's not in the list. So if I say not in the list, so is howdy not in greetings list? Well, that's false because it is. So this should print false. Okay, so that's how the in and not in works. It kind of gives you a true or false. So this is cool when you're searching for items inside of a list, right? So if you have a list of names and you want to see if like, Bob is one of the names in the list, you could check if Bob is in the names list and that'll return a true or false value. So just remember that it will return a true or false. So that tells you true. When you use the in operator, true means that it is there, false means that it's not. And then if you use the not in, you just have to be careful because if you use not in and it's true, that means it's not in the list. And then if you use not in and it's false, that means it is in the list because not in is false. Okay, so there's a little bit of just some complexity there, but it's pretty understandable and self-explanatory. So let's do a small little program for that kind of uses in and not in. So here's an example. Let's say you have a list called my pets equals, let's say we have some names, right? So I don't know, Zoe, Pookie, I don't even know what pet names you have. And then let's say Sophie. Okay. So those are the pet names. And then let's get some input. So we can say something like input, pet name equals input, enter a pet name. Okay. All right, so then we can check if the pet name they entered is in or not in the list. So if pet name is not in my pets, meaning they entered a name that's not in the my pets list, then you could print something like I do not have a pet named, and then you could be like very specific and actually put the pet name in here. Else print, and then you could do something like pet name is my pet. Okay, so let's run it. And then we'll talk about exactly what's happening. So actually, let's talk about what's going to happen here. So there's a list called my pets, and it has 3 pet names, Zoe, Pookie, and Sophie. Then you're asking for some input. You're asking the user to enter a pet name. And then it's going to check if the pet name is not in the list, then it's going to say, I do not have a pet named, and then it's going to say the pet name that they entered. Otherwise, it's going to say the pet name that they entered is my pet. So it's essentially just looking for that name in the list and giving different output based on whether or not that name is in the list. So enter a pet name. So if I say like, Max, it's going to say I do not have a pet named Max. But let's say we say Zoe, it says Zoe is my pet. Now, unfortunately, if you do lowercase Zoe, it's not going to recognize it. But we can get around that by just switching everything to either uppercase or lowercase. But we'll talk about that another time. Okay, there's an easy fix for that. All right, so that's another trick you can use for, using in and not in, so it's pretty cool. Okay, and then we have something like this. So this is called the multiple assignment trick. And this is a shortcut that lets you assign multiple variables with the values in a list in one line of code. So this is going to make more sense in a little bit. So instead of doing this, so let's say you have a cat list, and inside the list you have fat, black, so it's a black cat, and its description is that it's a loud cat, right? So well, that first word, fat, talks about the size, so maybe you want to assign that to a variable called size, so you would say size equals cat at position 0, meaning fat is the size, because position 0 is the word fat. Color then is cat at position 1, the item at position 1, and then disposition, or like the personality basically, equals cat at position 2. Okay, so that means you're assigning fat to size, black to color, and loud to disposition, but you had to do it in 3 lines of code. So instead of doing that, you could type this line of code. You could still have cat equals, and I'm just going to copy and paste this. And then you could say something like size, comma, color, comma, disposition equals cat. So what's cool about this is that it takes every item in cat and it assigns it to each variable in that same order. Now, what that means is that, you know, your number of variables needs to match the number of elements, right? So let me comment this part out. Oops. Yep, it's not working. I don't know why. Strange. It's not letting me comment out. There we go. Okay, so this is fine. So if I run this, nothing's going to happen, but it's not going to give me an error now. If I do like size, color, disposition, and age, it's going to give me an error because I have one too many variables, right? So it says not enough values to unpack. So it expected 4, it got 3. So basically it's saying there's only 3 pieces of information inside of the cat list, but there's 4 variables that you're trying to use. So, you know, size has fat, color has black, disposition has loud, but there's no information to save inside of age. Now I could easily change that by doing this, like 5, let's say. And now it's totally okay because it's going to assign 5 to age. Okay, so just be careful with that. Make sure that your variables match with the amount of items in your list. So variable number needs to match number of items in the list. Okay, so it's kind of common sense, but you know, I thought I would point that out. Another thing I want to go over is something some of you or a lot of you already know, but I haven't actually discussed, so I think it's worth it. So it's the augmented assignment operators. Now, it seems like I'm kind of all over the place, but these are all things associated with lists, and sometimes not with lists, but it's things that you should know. So the augmented assignment trick is basically, let's say you have, you know, we've been doing this a lot, number equals number plus 1, right? Well, there's a shortcut. And again, a lot of you guys have been using this shortcut. So the shortcut is, instead of doing number equals number plus 1, you could do number plus equals 1, right? And so let's say you have number equals number plus 2. The shortcut is number plus equals 2. Okay, so I want to give you guys all of them. So here's all of them. I'm going to do it like in a table. Augmented assignment statement. And here's the shortcut. So let's say you do oh wait, sorry. Let's do it the other way. Assignment statement. So augmented means shortcut. And here's the shortcut. So num equals num plus 1. The shortcut is num plus equals 1. And again, it doesn't have to be 1, but we're just using 1 as our, you know, default. Actually, I'll just use a different number here so as to not to confuse you. So num minus 2, let's say, then the shortcut would be, if you want, pause the video and try to write it. But the shortcut would be num minus equals 2. Okay, let's say we have num equals num times 4. The shortcut would be num times equals 4. Then there's one for division, num equals num divided by 10, let's say. Then the shortcut is num divide equals 10. And finally, there's one for mod. So num equals num mod 6 would be num mod equals 6. Okay, so these are just shortcuts statements that mean exactly the same thing. So this is the expression, sorry, the equation or the expression, let's say, the statement, and this is the way to write it as a shortcut. So again, a lot of you guys have been using the shortcut already because you know it from, you know, your research online, or maybe you've coded before, but I never explicitly talked about it, so I kind of wanted to point this out. Okay, and num is just a variable I'm using. It could be any variable you want. So if we have like a greeting, let's say, you know, a string, and I say hello, and I want to add to hello a hello there, I could do greeting equals greeting plus there. So this should say hello there. And so if I print greeting, it's going to print hello there. Okay, but then the shortcut way would be, so this is the shortcut, same thing. I could do, let's say greeting is, or let's say, you know, name equals John, and I want to add the last name Smith. I'm going to put a space here. I could do something like name plus equals Smith. So that's saying, you know, name equals name plus Smith. So take the previous name and add Smith to it. So this should also give me, this should give me what I want, which is John Smith. Let me run that. Yep, it does. So I just wanted to show you that you could either do it this way, greeting equals greeting plus there. So it's going to take the hello and add there to it. Or you could do the plus equals, which does the same thing. It takes the previous value and adds Smith to the end. So it's just a shortcut. So that's the shortcut, like in play, and how it would come out if you used it. Okay. Let's talk about some methods or functions. So these are pre-coded methods, so methods that already exist. Or so methods is another way to say functions. So built-in methods or functions that you can use with lists. So let's see. There is the index method, and what that does is it takes a value and returns the index of the value in the list. So let me show you guys what that means. So let's do a colors list. Red, white, blue. Okay, so here's what you can do. You can print the, so you have to use the dot notation. To call this method. So what I mean is this. So you want to use the index, but you want to use it on the colors list. So you would do colors dot index, and then inside index you would put what you're looking for. So let's say I'm looking for the index of the value red. So that red value is in position 0. So hopefully this will print 0, which it does. Okay, and then let me just show you. If I put blue in here and I run it, it's going to return 2 because blue is in the second position. Now what happens if I put something that doesn't exist in the list? Do we get an error? We do. So the error is that orange is not in the list, and it's actually an error. It doesn't actually print like a value, like a negative value or something. It actually gives you an error. So be careful, because you might want to put this in try and except, so that way you don't get an error. But two things: you want to make sure that you're using the dot notation. So when you're using index method, this is a new way to do things, and you might not understand it, but that's okay. You don't have to understand why we're using the dot method, the dot notation, I mean. For now, you just have to remember that when you're calling the index function on a list, you do have to use the dot notation. So you would do colors, which is the list, dot index, and we're looking for that value. So if I put white, I should get 1 because it's in the first position, right? So remember, indexing starts at 0, so this is 0, 1, 2. Okay, good. There's also the append method, which what that does is it adds a new value to the list. And then there's also the insert method, which sounds like the same thing, but I think what the append does, it adds a new value to the list at the end of the list, whereas the insert method adds a new value to the list at a certain index. So let me show you guys. So let's get rid of this. So we're still going to use the colors list. So if I do colors dot append, so again you need to use the dot notation. Let's actually put that here somewhere. Use dot notation. Okay. So colors dot append. So I want to append another color, red, white, blue. Let's say green. Okay. So then I want to print colors. Let's see what happens here. Hopefully I have 4 things now: red, white, blue, and green. So what it did is it took the green and it appended it, meaning it put it at the end of the list. But let's say now I want to insert something. So insert would be used like this. Let me show you guys. So insert, you have to specify the position. So if I do like this, 1 comma, so instead of green, now that we have green already, let's do orange. So it's going to insert it at position 1 and push everything to the right. Let me print the new colors. So I'm going to just comment this one out and just print the last version. So look at what happened, guys. So now we have orange and green because I did append green to the end of the list. But look at what happens when I inserted orange at position 1. Well, what it did was, what was at position 1, which is white, it replaced white with orange and then pushed everything to the right. So insert, this will insert a new element at the index specified and push everything to the right. Okay, so it inserted orange at position 1 and then it pushed white to the next position. So white was at position 1, but it pushed it to position 2. Okay, So that's pretty cool and useful. There's also, so here's another method. I'm going to go back to my methods notes. So in here, we're going to talk about the remove method. Okay. And it does exactly what that sounds. It removes a specified element from a list. Okay, so if I go to colors dot remove and I want to remove blue, then I'm going to print colors. What's happening is I'm actually just going to, let me actually get rid of that print in between. And then if I remove blue, I should have my list red, orange, white, green, and then blue will be removed. So that's pretty self-explanatory. If you try to remove something that doesn't exist, it's probably going to give you an error. So if I try to remove, purple, and then I try to print my colors list, probably going to get an error because it's not going to find it. And yep, it says list.remove x. X is not in the list. So that's a pretty self-explanatory error. So that wouldn't work. Okay, let me show you other methods. There's also the sort method, which what that does is exactly what it sounds like. It sorts elements in a list either alphabetically or numerically. You could play around with this and see how it does it exactly, but if I do colors.sort, and if you don't put anything inside of sort, it's just going to sort it alphabetically in this case because we have a bunch of strings. So let's see what happens here. If it's going to sort it. Oh, let me get rid of the remove purple because it's giving me an error. Let's see. All right, take a look. Green because it's G, orange, red, white. Okay, so it sorted it. If you have like numbers, so let's see. I'm going to comment this out. Numbers list, so let's see, like 100, -5, 8, 5, 3, 0, and I apply sort to it, numbers.sort, and then I print my numbers. Let's see what happens here. It should sort it numerically, -5, 0, 3, 5, 8, 100. Okay, so that's also pretty self-explanatory. You can also sort things in a reverse order. So the way you would do that is you would say sort, and inside of the sort you would do reverse equals true, which is kind of a weird syntax, but all of these things you can always look up online, like what sort of things you can actually use with sort, what type of things. So let's see what happens here. Run it. And then it's going to reverse, did it? Yeah, it did, from the highest number to the lowest. And this also works with alphabetically. Okay, so yeah, so that's a bunch of methods associated with lists. I think I'm going to stop here because we went over a lot. If you found some of this stuff confusing, I would rewatch the parts that you didn't understand. And I did go a little bit fast because there was a lot to cover, but I'll probably do a third video that talks about lists and a new topic, actually, a new data type called a tuple, but we'll do that next time.